Coming up on The World Today. The World Health Organization preparing to launch an independent evaluation of the global coronavirus response. Sao Paulo's Mayor Bruno Covas says public hospitals have reached 90% capacity due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Plus, traffic is back in Bangkok as Thailand enters its second phase of easing lockdown measures. A warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. It's the start of a new week and many countries around the world are still easing lockdown measures to get the economy back up. Over at the WHO headquarters in Switzerland, Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus has been defending the WHO sounding the alarm early to warn the world about the coronavirus. Dr. Ghebreyesus argued that it gave countries ample warning, guidance and advice. Well, it's the first of its kind, a virtual meeting of global health leaders at the 73rd Annual World Health Assembly. The assembly is to discuss a resolution being presented by the European Union that calls for an independent evaluation of the WHO's performance under its Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus. While for UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the WHO is irreplaceable and says it needs greater resources to provide support for developing countries. Well, let's take a look at more at that meeting today. Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says an independent evaluation of the global coronavirus response would be launched as soon as possible. He made the promise following criticism from the United States and other countries on its handling of the pandemic. U.S. President Donald Trump has questioned severely the organization's performance during the pandemic and even led international criticism of China's handling of the early stages of the crisis. Meanwhile, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa also called for assistance to Africa to include debt relief and help with diagnostics, drugs and medical supplies.
To be successful, we must all commit to mutual ownership and accountability. One way to do that, proposed by the Africa Group last year, is through a system of universal periodic review, in which countries agree to a regular and transparent review of each nation's preparedness. We urge countries to proceed with caution. Countries that move too fast without putting in place the public health architecture to detect and suppress transmission run a real risk of handicapping their own recovery. The risk remains high, and we have a long road to travel.
We'll have more on that virtual meeting and other updates from the COVID-19 pandemic. But in the meantime, Professorbola Quintero, Director General of the Bolitag Center for Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, joins us now to discuss more on this meeting. Professor Quintero, thank you so much for joining us on The World Today.
Thank you.
So this assembly is calling for a global push for inquiry into COVID-19 response across the board, most especially the World Health Organization. In your opinion, how has the organization done so far?
I think the organization has been responding to the whims and caprices of its member states. The member states, in number about 194, they all have very conflicting interests. So they are not looking to protect a common interest per se. So in responding to the performance of the World Health Organization, one will say that, look, whoever is stronger than the other has been able to influence the organization to decide. So in this case, I will say that the organization has done well to the extent that it has been able to inform the global community on a regular basis, in fact, on a daily basis, the situational reality of the pandemic. When we take into account its own challenges, then one cannot but say that, look, the criticisms generally levied against the organization are welcome, but at the end of the day, the other side of it, there is no foundation, no good foundation for that.
Seems we're having some difficulties with the connection with Professor Quintero. Well, we will try and reconnect. But in the meantime, let's take a look at some other stories. Well, the search for a cure to the coronavirus continues as head of the EU's Medicines Agency, Guido Rassi, says initial authorization for U.S. pharmaceutical company Gilead's remdesivir as a COVID-19 treatment could be granted in the coming days. The EMA has already recommended the compassionate use of the drug, which allows a drug to be administered to patients even before it has been fully authorized. An EU conditional marketing authorization allows a drug to be sold for a year in the 27-nation bloc before all necessary dates are available on its efficacy and side effects. Apart from remdesivir, Rassi said other possible treatments against COVID-19 that may be available fast are those based on monoclonal antibodies, which can block the new coronavirus that causes the COVID-19.
Now there is an ongoing rolling review in the EMA and to support the CHMP decision. And it might be that a conditional market authorization can be issued in the coming days, subject to the data that we submitted and how the expert will deem those data robust enough to issue what I expect could be the conditional approval. I don't see for other major other kind of approval at this stage. The only possible real faster coming can be the monoclonal antibodies. That, as you know, are a sort of middle ground between the natural immunity and the vaccine, and because it's using the same principle to block the virus by artificial, as I may call, by biotechnology-made antibodies.
Concern is rising in Brazil over its handling of the coronavirus pandemic in the country. The country yesterday overtook Spain and Italy in the number of infections. Now, Mayor of the city of Sao Paulo, Bruno Covas, says the country's health system is near collapse as the need grows for emergency beds to deal with the number of cases. According to Mayor Covas, public hospitals are working on 90% capacity and could run out of space in 2 weeks. He has accused those flouting lockdown rules of playing Russian roulette with people's lives. Meanwhile, the country's president, Jair Bolsonaro, has been criticized at home and abroad for his handling of the health crisis. He has defied health advice on social distancing and refuses to impose strict measures to help in curbing the spread of the virus. Well, earlier we mentioned more countries are continuing to ease lockdown measures. Well, Lebanon is one of them. The economy reopened today after a 4-day shutdown imposed after a rise in cases threatened a second outbreak. Already in the throes of a deep economic crisis, vendors and business owners in the country's capital said they are worried about inflation affecting everyone. Lebanon is going through its worst economic and financial crisis in decades, which has seen the currency crash, unemployment soar, street protests, and the country defaulting on its sovereign debt. The lockdown has been in place since mid-March. The country began easing virus-related restrictions on businesses in late April to try to restore some economic activity. But that plan was put on hold last week after a rise in new cases alarmed health officials. Lebanon has been relatively successful in reining the outbreak that set an overnight curfew and shut most business and air travel. The country of about 6 million people has recorded 911 infections and 26 deaths. Well, let's head back to our discussion on the 73rd Annual World Health Assembly. Professorbola Quintero is back with us to continue our discussion. Professor Quintero, it's good to have you back with us. Before the slight interruption, we were talking about how the World Health Organization has fared so far in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And, you know, while a lot of countries have been very supportive of the WHO, with both China and South Korea pledging hundreds of millions of dollars to the global fight, China has also come under criticism. What do you make of how this is played out? Could China have done better in alerting the global community when this, coronavirus pandemic came to light?
I wouldn't say that the Chinese would have done in any way better for one simple reason. COVID-19 pandemic is an expression of international politics. It's all politics. Muammar Gaddafi, before he died, he reminded us that the powerful countries of the world, they create viruses. Then they manufacture vaccines. They keep the vaccines for a period of time, giving the impression to the whole world that they are now just making new efforts to make them. But actually, by the time they create new viruses, they provide the mitigation, the solution, the vaccines. And then later on, they will now ask all others to come and be buying the vaccines and so on and so forth. That is according to Muammar Gaddafi before he died. Now, when you look at the immediate causal factors, the politics as it is, the Cold War that is emerging at the level of the Chinese and the Americans clearly point to what Muammar Gaddafi had theorized, according to which, for instance, at the level of the Americans, the issue is that the coronavirus originated in Wuhan in China. The Chinese responded and said, yes, that would have been with the aid of the Americans, that they planted the virus in China. So you can now see that at the level of the Chinese and the Americans, mutual accusations, mutual allegations. So in this case, if it is in the interest of the Chinese will have done better. If it is not in the interest of the Chinese will play politics with it.
Oh, all right then, Professorbola Quintero. You know, this assembly is running for 2 days, and we still have to watch out to what the United States has to say after, shortening funding from the World Health Organization not too long ago. But we will keep our eyes out and see how all that plays out. Professorbola Quintero, Director General of the Bolitag Center for Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Thank you so much for joining us on The World Today. Coming up after the break. Well, nothing remains the same after the pandemic, including little luxuries such as getting your nails done. We'll show you how in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Well, if you ever missed it, it's back now. That's talking about the traffic on New Delhi roads. India has relaxed lockdown restrictions and allowed certain businesses to reopen, but that's only in certain parts of the country. The government on Sunday extended a nationwide lockdown to May the 31st as the number of COVID-19 cases exceed 95,000 in the country. Hairdressers, beauty parlors, stationery shops and butchers were some of the small businesses seen open today. According to an order from the government, schools, malls and other public places will remain mostly closed, though rules will be relaxed in areas with low numbers of cases. Large gatherings are still prohibited, but outside of containment zones with high numbers of active cases, all other activities will be permitted, potentially allowing commerce and industry to reopen across much of the country. India, however, has more COVID-19 cases than China. Traffic has also returned to the city of Bangkok in Thailand as normalcy returned to the once bustling city. Bus terminals resumed operations for the first time since the lockdown after all bus routes were cancelled in March as travel between provinces were prohibited. Under social distancing guidelines, passengers now have to sit diagonally from each other. Only 16 bus routes between the northern and northeastern parts of the country have been reinstated currently. Well, let's check in on Hong Kong, where the legislature plunged into chaotic scuffles for a second time this month, earlier today, as pro-Beijing lawmakers took control of a key committee, paving the way for a debate on a bill that would criminalize abuse of China's national anthem. Pro-democracy legislators charged at security guards surrounding pro-establishment lawmakers Chan Kin-por, who were taking the chairman's seat in the meeting against procedural objections by the opposition. Guards hauled several legislators out of the chamber, some kicking and shouting. It was the second time in 10 days that legislators pushed and shoved each other over the procedures of electing a chairperson. Last May, scuffles broke out in the legislature over a proposed extradition bill that, if passed, could have seen people stand trial in courts in mainland China. The bill sparked often violent protests in Hong Kong and was later scrapped. Well, a Jewish settler has been found guilty of racially motivated murder by an Israeli court in a 2015 arson attack that killed a Palestinian couple and their baby in the occupied West Bank. The death of 18-month-old Ali Dawabashe and his parents, Saad and Riham, contributed to a surge of Israeli-Palestinian violence after US-sponsored peace talks stalled in 2014. The ensuing investigation and persecution of Amira Ben Ulail also laid bare tensions within Israeli society, with some ultra-nationalists challenging the state's handling of Jewish suspects. Clutching a Jewish holy book, 25-year-old Ben Ulail sat slumped in the dock as the verdict was read out. Israel's Shin Bet counter-terrorism agency held the verdict handed down by Lod District Court, which carries a potential life prison term as a landmark. Israeli media quoted his wife, Oriane, as saying he was with her on the night of the Duma attack and was innocent. Now, Extinction Rebellion activists today filled London's Trafalgar Square with 2,000 children's shoes while holding up a banner reading "COVID today, climate tomorrow, act now." The group say the installation was intended to highlight the need for government to act on climate change in order to protect children's future as the UK's coronavirus lockdown is eased. Extinction Rebellion said the shoes were donated by parents and teachers from across London who are worried about their children's future due to climate change. Well, it's a big day for Italians today. They can finally get their hair cut and coloured, have a fresh manicure, buy spring outfits in clothes shops, and eat at an actual table at a restaurant. Things have changed though. Strict social distancing and hygiene rules mean plexiglass and face masks are the new normal. Well, welcome to the brave new world of looking good and dining out in post-coronavirus Italy. A look inside a large beauty salon in a built-up middle-class area of Rome was completely packed as it reopened with its new post-lockdown look. The salon spent some 20,000 euros on changes to make more customers and also make them feel safe, as well as plexiglass. They've increased the number of nail files, clippers and other equipment that are individually wrapped, thermometers for temperature checks as customers enter, and other sanitization methods. Well, that was, of course, after a 10-week lockdown that the Italian shops and hairdressers and restaurants finally got back to action. Well, in Greece, the country's most famous tourist attraction opened with plexiglass barriers and social distancing markers today as the country eased a lockdown on archaeological sites. The handful of visitors that traveled marveled at having one of the most visited tourist sites in the world all to themselves. The clear plexiglass barrier on the walkway, the gateway of Acropolis, was a stark contrast to the ancient marble columns of the temple. Workers wearing masks and plastic face shields were on site to inform the foreign and local visitors of the social distancing regulations, which require visitors to remain 1.5 meters apart.
So the first time the Acropolis reopened, we say, okay, let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go, yeah. It's a very good day, and we are very happy.
It's incredible to be here.
Yeah, to stay here in Athens, to see another time the Acropolis and the other wonders of this city.
Amazing, isn't it? Very privileged, very fortunate, and quite amazing. Yeah, it's an amazing place anyway, but to have it to ourselves is. Tranquility is quite incredible. It's been very difficult, but the first steps, they're getting back to normality, albeit we have to take precautions, we have to wash, we have to wear masks, the screens, keeping separate. But no, it's a positive and good sign and a good reward for the hard work everyone has done.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shuboale. Bye for now.